Um,
But yeah,
yeah.
I mean, you nailed so much of the spirit of what I like to find and discover in my travels. And I
And please
just
tell me, I mean, seeing that we're having this call now, apart from the actual hotel and location reservations that we have in place, like if there is something that you have come across that I've missed, or we could, if you can suggest to me what to sacrifice in its place, we can
that
That's
will
going to
be
be the big
that'll be the
we can
toughest
challenge.
add
part.
something in.
That'll be the toughest part. I always,
Yeah.
I always have to find a way to contain myself since there's always an end date. But, I think the thing I love about this itinerary the most is, it's just like that taste across things that I think, to me, bring to life, some of what I missed when I got to South Africa the first time. And, but like to me, you took the spirit of what I try to find in so many of these destinations I go to, and that's like, the things that transcend politics, geographies, everything else, right, is, who's it was like we were talking about, it was like, once you look at somebody and ask how their mama made chicken when they were growing up, it just takes everything out of the way, and it's like, ooh, it's like this and this and this, and all the differences go away, but I
Yeah, it's so true.
love of food and drink and music and culture and just understanding how things came to be a certain way in all these different places.
Mm.
I love, like, it's just, it makes no sense until it makes sense, and you don't know until you ask or
Yes.
taste or try or listen. So I love that.
It is so true. Chrissy, for the people that are going to watch this
Mhm.
on playback, how would you prefer for us to walk through it? We have obviously some slides to walk through to show everybody, but we can do this whatever way you want because we brought our little cocktails
I
and
know, got the cocktail ready. Going to be a long night for me waiting for the F1 first practice to kick in Vegas. So, let's start off with just how this started.
yeah.
Um, I've had the opportunity to travel with Nicola and Nanda and see kind of what and how they've crafted journeys for us in the past, um but you, Nicole, have also watched my travels,
Mhm.
and we started talking about this a while ago about, doing it. I've just never made the time, and I think these last few years I've dedicated myself to going somewhere that I've just maybe not work wouldn't take me, or that I really just was jonesing to discover a little bit more, right? Because it's just so foreign, right? And I love that you dug kind of what I was doing and how I was doing it. And so, I so appreciate you staying after me, because this has been so much fun putting together a journey that I didn't just stumble upon, that, that we're doing it with focus and intention, but in the same spirit in which I do it. And
Yeah.
that was why this was so cool to me, and because I'm, kind of committed to kind of doing things I wouldn't normally do. South Africa is kind of a little bit different because work has taken me there. It will again at one point, but I don't know that I'll have the time to just really get in and discover. And the one time I went, I was in and out in 2 days, and I didn't get to, and it just has killed me. So when we tried to decide where to go, like, we kind of narrowed it down to about 5 places, and this one just felt right. And I'm so excited because there's so many different things to do and discover. It's a very fascinating place like that for me. There's just a lot of.
I love how the title kind of almost determined that South Africa was definitely it because the title just came out of nowhere. I'm like, okay, Chris, we have to do this one. And Kira
Yes.
is just going to knock it out the park. I said, let me give Kira a brief because I know she's going to have a million one ideas. And we've been working together for how long now, Kira? Oh my gosh.
Wow. Yeah. It could be close to
15,
20.
20, 20
Yeah.
years? Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well,
So.
I think we should just get into it. Like, that's kind of the spirit in which this started. Um, Kira has been amazing. We've given her things to inspire her thought, and she has knocked it out of the park as far as I'm concerned with this itinerary. And this is what it is today. It may change. You never know, a little, but I think it's pretty freaking solid right now. And so let's just get into it. And I know this will answer a bunch of questions for people, and they can watch it at their will, and we will fill these spots, I think, really quickly, honestly.
Well, who wouldn't want to travel with you with all of the fabulous foodie posts that you do? I'm so jealous every time.
Just
You're
the people
gonna
who
have
eat
to
for
follow Chris
sustenance
on
need not
social.
apply.
Yeah. And
I
I
don't
think
understand eating for sustenance. I don't get it. But I respect it. You do you. This probably isn't the trip for you, though.
yeah, no, but I think I've been putting a bug in your ear for what, 3 years,
Yeah,
maybe, ever
yeah.
since post-COVID. So here we are. So cuisine, cocktails, conservation, and culture with Chrissy. Woohoo!
I love it.
And we did have conversation in there as well, right? Because I think
We
we had a
did. We were
typo at
like,
one
I was
point.
like, is that a typo, conservation, or should we do conversation? And then we went back and forth, and it really was about conservation. But to me, it's conversation that
Mhm.
is the connective tissue with all of this. Because
So
you don't
true.
learn and you don't explore without conversation and questions and everything. So it certainly will be the kind of the thread in all of this,
Yeah,
because
and
so
we
much of
landed,
this is
yeah.
about learning and exploring.
It's so
So
true. And we landed on the dates. We talked about the dates a lot too. So we landed on August 21st to September 2nd for different reasons. It doesn't coincide with a lot of the HR TA kind of conferences and things like that. And Kara, why don't you introduce yourself first, but then tell us why is this an amazing time to visit South Africa? Because that also was a key component of why we landed on these dates.
Sure. Yeah. All right. Thank you. So yes, I'm Kira, and the one with the not American accent in this conversation. And now that you've mentioned that word conversation, that's what I love about this, because and why I mentioned my accent is because once you hear, you'll see that nearly every South African you meet and sit down at the table with or across the bar from is going to sound different to how I sound. So
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily representative of everyone's South African accent. But yeah, so on that introduction, as we said, Nicola and I have worked together for a very, very long time. I feel like I was just a child, really, when we first started. And I thought I was so grown up. But anyway, now I am grown up. Now I know, yeah, definitely.
It's a
I love
continual
that.
process for all of us, Kira.
I was just about to say, maybe I'll get there one day too. I don't know.
Oh boy. So yeah, and I'm just so excited that you chose South Africa, Chrissy. I can't believe you were here for 2 days when you were here before, because I can't imagine coming all this way and
I
turning around
regretted
and
it every
going all the way
minute
back.
since.
Um,
Trust me.
so this is wonderful, and your dates, the time that you have given for this trip is really a gift. A lot of other trips try and pack things into a much tighter time frame, and again, even, it's better than 2 days, but I do feel that people often miss really getting to grips with South Africans if they are in a rush in a way. So
Mhm.
not only do you have the time, but the fact that you enjoy conversations and that you're going to particularly sit down over meals. That's the
Yeah.
thing. That's what binds people. So very, very excited about this. The dates, Nicola, they work really well because it is our winter, so won't be sweltering hot Africa that people might
Mhm.
be expecting.
Yeah.
However, actually a lot of South Africa gets summer rainfall, so the winter is our dry season, which makes it really good for game viewing when you are on the
Mhm.
conservation portion of the trip, because the what we call the bush veld, the veld is very sparse, so it's actually not that green, it's not that thick, and you can see animals at a distance, you can see like kind of through the trees as opposed to only seeing what might be right outside your vehicle. So it's a good time for game viewing. It's a good time in Cape Town. Cape Town is the only part of the country that does get winter rainfall. But it's good for Cape Town because it's low season. It's not the windy season. If we do get rain, it's a little bit Mediterranean like. It's kind of drizzly and comes and goes. But actually, geez, these days with climate change, who knows?
Yeah.
It's a lovely time to visit Cape Town because it's not hectic, it's not packed, it's not very touristed. We call it the green season because in Cape Town it is the winter and the rain, and it turns all green and lovely. So yeah, it's kind of a good combination. Just to explain, then of course the conservation areas and Johannesburg, Pretoria, that's in the north, so that's where it'll be dry, and then you head south into the Mediterranean realm of Cape Town, and it turns all green at this time of year.
It's going to be
Love it.
so fun. It's so fun. And it's going to be so fun because you're traveling with Chrissy, who you guys all know, because this is going to be a Chrissy and Friends. So
Yes.
that's what I'm most excited about. So tell us about these amazing pictures, Chrissy, and you've traveled the world and you're a global traveler and you do it in a certain way.
Absolutely. Yeah. For me, you know, I've been to all the continents, right? So that was huge for me. I really, really wanted to. So this represents most of the continents, no US, but but for me, it has been about, just challenging my senses, challenging, my thought processes, understanding, culture through, food and drink and music and art and adventure, right? And so that's kind of what I've always, done, but I always did it around work, right?
Mhm.
I'd add time on, and that helped me to explore a lot of places. But in the last, maybe 4 or 5 years now, I've committed at least 2 weeks every year to go somewhere that work would not take me. And
Mhm.
that's really what you see, reflected here. Even in Japan, where I have been, for work, taking time and moving in with this family for, a few days on their, working farm, was just amazing, right? And going and you know, in this one shot, just ATVing through the jungle, essentially. I mean, it's just, doing things that I just have no business doing, that just bring all new perspectives, was kind of what I was going for with a lot of these trips, and just doing some things I wouldn't normally do, like hang out with penguins and camels and stuff. And so, even where it's a little kitschy, it's, to me, um, how would I have ever done this? And so I'm just being
Sure.
super intentional about it. And I
Mhm.
have learned more, just perspectives about just life, right?
Mhm.
Not having everything be about work, not having everything, be about what I know and what I think. So anyway, that's what you see represented here, is just trying to enjoy things that, I would never see and do.
I love that. And I need you to tell me about bridge climb because I'm hoping to do that next year, but I am scared to death. So I've already
Oh,
turned it down twice. I'm like, next year I've got to do it.
Nicola, you know better than anybody, because you've traveled with me, before my knees worked, and
Yep.
and now that they don't. And that bridge climb was literally, can I, because I can, right? And
Mhm.
but it was 20 times more than that it ended up being. But the whole time I was sitting there going, I wonder if I could do this. Like, I haven't stretched my knees that much when I got new knees. Like, let's see, but that's something I never would have been able to do, before, having bilateral knee surgery, right? And so just conquering new things. Same thing, you know, hiking all around Antarctica, right? Just doing stuff like that. There are things that I never imagined I'd be able to do, but I can now, and so I'm gonna.
That's awesome. The live list. We've just renamed the bucket list here at NAMDA this past week to the live list. And I think
I
you
love it.
the live list like personified. And I
Love it.
love that. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about how we designed the program. And there are so many different ways you can design a journey. And that's always the biggest challenge, but it's the thing that Kara and I love the most is being afforded the opportunity to put our creative energy. Because the one thing we don't like to do is say, oh, I have this itinerary for you. Why don't you do this one? Well,
Yeah.
we're all different. Why would we just
Yeah.
offer up one option, you know?
Yeah.
So the things we're excited about are cuisine, you know, all the foodie stuff that you love, cocktails and other beverages, wine, of course, in South Africa.
Yes.
The conservation, and then the culture. Because we just, when we were chatting, you know, Chrissy and I, we just dialed into those and we felt they would be a perfect fit. And Kara, when I shared the vision with you, there were just a million and one things that came to mind, right? And
Right. Yeah, a million.
so the biggest challenge we had was trying to dial it in and fit it in, even though it's a generous time scale.
Yeah.
It was so hard
So hard.
to pinpoint. So, Kira, I'm going to invite you to talk a little bit, you know, as we go through this. This is giving everybody just a flavor, and we're going to dig deeper. And let's just walk through. We start in Johannesburg, of course, and that's where everybody will fly into. And then let's talk a little bit about Johannesburg and all of the amazing things that fit into those 4 pillars. And we're starting off pretty darn well. And Chrissy, this was one of your asks,
Absolutely.
the taxes, right?
I
So
love this world's best bar list. Like, to me, I love it. And I always, wherever I go, I always go to one of their best bars because it's just fascinating, right? You know, again, the thing I love about flavors is the art and the science, and the art of it all coming together. And so these top bars usually have some really, really interesting, you know, people and what I mean, the things I've seen. So there was only one in South Africa, you know, that made the top 100, and so I was so
only one on the
excited.
continent, not just in
Yes,
South Africa, just
that's
one on
true.
the entire
Exactly,
continent.
the entire continent. Exactly. I
Yeah, I
love
mean,
it.
it got me thinking when because obviously, I know of more than sin and taxes. And I'm like, how amazing must the other 99 be that none of these
Right?
other ones in my country that I've been to that I think are fabulous. I'm like, you're not on the list. Geez, that list must be pretty darn amazing. But
Absolutely.
thankfully, sin and taxes is on it, and it's right there in like almost walking distance from where you're going to be staying. So you know, it's right
Right.
around the corner. And I spoke to the team there, and they were super excited. And I thought, actually, this is a great way to start the trip because usually, you know, when people get off a plane, get off that transatlantic flight, you know, when Nicholas first suggested we do this, I thought, oh, that's tough on the first night. And I thought, maybe it's just perfect
It's actually
because
perfect.
what, you know, it's going to like spice things up, get everyone
Yeah,
going,
Right? We're gonna
and the
kick this
vibe
off
is just
right.
yeah.
yeah, and it's so Johannesburg that it will really kind of make you feel like you've arrived.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
and it'd be great. And we won't do it super late, obviously. We'll do it relative to like making
Yeah.
it a nice, easy day. But a
Yeah.
cocktail and dinner and a good night's rest, I can't think of a better way to start a
I
program.
love that they were willing to do it as a class too, right? To, you know, because again, you know, just how they think about these things is one of the things I find fascinating about the world's 50, you know, lists that come out, and how they bring flavors together, what inspires them. I think it's such a great way to kick this off. So
Hmm.
I dig it. And
It's
it
not
was
a
cool
canned
because I asked for this
experience.
one by name. So
Yes, you
Yes.
did. And it's not a canned experience. It's not something you can go on and see. And Kara's negotiation skills obviously have paid off because
I
she's
know.
gone in there and presented this idea. And that's what I love about, again, this creative process of not just replicating things that exist already. It's like curating it to make it perfect.
Right.
And something else that's awesome is like you've introduced so many different cultures, Kira. So the
Mm.
Afro-political walking tour in Johannesburg, that helps them understand Johannesburg in a really cool way.
Yeah, I mean, Johannesburg is really like our version of New York. It's our melting pot. So there isn't one type of Johannesburg person, food, experience. So this walking tour will introduce elements of Joburg, people of Joburg that are really part of its fabric, but you're not going to see them everywhere. It's in certain pockets, and as with any, I suppose, long-standing immigrant community, so not a recent thing at all, but the blended food community that comes out of that, and this particular one, very sort of Afro-Asian, so Afro being like our immigrants from other countries in Africa coming south, and bringing, I feel like that anything north of us, because we are the one, right at the bottom, is spicier than we are. So so it brings like spices into from Africa into the south, but then also obviously from the east, very much from the east, from early settlement days, right up to today, more sort of modern kind of movement around the planet. But so very Afro-Asian, that connection, and very casual also. I mean, this is really a walking street vibe thing, popping in here and there, all the smells coming at you all the time, and that very like sort of close casual contact with people
Awesome. So
making
this
it.
is kind of your street food, kind of, we're going to have some really wonderful food experiences, and I'm going to jump all the way to the right just because it makes sense, because we're going to do the Jazz Sunday, and this is in a spectacular place, right? So this is starting to introduce the Mandela conversation. Tell us about this amazing place, and this is why we decided to have the day's arrival the day we did, so we could do this very specific thing.
Yeah, so Jazz Sunday's obviously only on a Sunday, so we had to line up the days perfectly for that. And Sanctuary Mandela is the residence, the home, of Mandela during his presidency, the early part of his presidency. I mean, being the man that he was, he actually moved out of this residence into something a little bit more humble, I guess, for part of his presidency, and then certainly, obviously, after his actual term, moved again. But so this building is renovated, and it operates now as a boutique accommodation establishment. But the heart, those are on the second floor, and on the ground floor is this restaurant. But the cool thing is that the entire reason for the restaurant being there is that his personal chef was retained, and she has designed the menu around sort of his favorite dishes. So she doesn't necessarily make everything anymore. She is there, she consults, but she put the menu together. She has a team there that's obviously now learned how to produce and make this food that he liked. And I think also professionalize it a bit, so it's a little higher end than probably he was served every single day. But being an African story, and being sort of based on his life, it is again very inclusive. It's a place where people gather, and hence the jazz. So obviously he also loved jazz. So bringing in the jazz element, music just gets everyone into very relaxed mode. Music is incredibly important to South Africans, incredibly important. So it's a beautiful combination of food and music.
Oh, it's awesome. There's so many different threads in this, and we wanted to talk about everything, but we're talking about the highlights, but there's so much more. So everybody should look at the
trip is for. That's what the trip is for.
So much
the teaser.
Yeah. And then Soweto is a must, but obviously you're going to do that by tuk-tuk, so it allows you to see so much, because people think of Soweto as just being this small slum community if you haven't been before, but it's not, Kira, right? It's definitely
not by a long shot. Soweto is almost surpassing Joburg in some places in terms of its progress towards just being an awesome, inclusive mini city. So not a city in terms of high rises, but a
Yeah.
city in terms of diversity and community. And Soweto, for me, it's a place where I particularly feel incredibly at home. It's just so warm and welcoming, and it's so sassy. That's what the
Mhm.
word
Oh, I
that
love
always comes to me about Soweto. It's sassy. I mean, there's ambition, there's drive, there's aspiration. It's a very aspirational community.
Uh-huh.
Um, and there's, there are rich areas of it and there are poor areas of it. So they're desperately poor areas of it. You can't avoid that. And then there's really, these successful Sowetans that just when they gained, I suppose, a higher level of economic ability, they didn't move out of Soweto. They just
Mhm.
improved what they've got
Awesome.
there.
Mhm.
So you've got a lot of range, economic range in Soweto. And it's the place, Soweto is almost for me, the reason why so many South Africans speak so many languages, because kids grow up in neighborhoods with neighbors of different language origin, and so they naturally grow up into speaking five, six, seven of our languages. And this is not a talent that white South Africans have. I have to say, white South
Mhm.
Africans are language challenged, especially our people like me, English speaking white South Africans generally just rely on the universality of English. So Sowetans, mostly being black South Africans, their language abilities are amazing. And again, that diversity comes into their food. But let's go back to what you actually do in Soweto. Going to Lebos is a just like a heart, a center of heart in Soweto. It started as a backpackers, but it's expanded into kind of a community vibe. They do music concerts there. They do talks around the fire, so they'll get artists or poets, traditional doctors, all kinds of cultural things. They'll have conversations around those themes around the fires. And with the visitors toing and froing out of the backpackers, you've got an international influx. They do a lot of community work through sports and education and gardening. And so we like to go there as the base and jump into their tuk-tuks with their drivers, and their team take us around their neighborhood, speaking to their neighbors. So it's a very personal introduction into Soweto. And then we sit around the fire and have one of those chats, which is a very, again, South African or African thing to do, to sit around a fire. Very much part of our
it.
culture. Outdoors, flames flying,
I
and it
love
just
that.
seems to break down the barriers.
And that leans into something that Chrissy and I talked about as well, is, Chrissy knows all too well what's important to us here at Nanda. And that's keeping every dollar that we spend on behalf of people that travel with us as local as possible. And South Africa is a perfect example of how profoundly impactful that can be. And Chrissy, you've seen that too on your travels around the
Totally,
world, right?
totally.
Yeah.
So if I may just add, like the highlights of what you're going to Soweto to see, and that you will be pulling into little stops with the tuk-tuks. So Soweto in this neighborhood is the only place, I believe, in the world where two Nobel Peace Prize winners have lived on the same street in their
Mm.
same lifetime. So Desmond Tutu's house is there, and Nelson Mandela's former home, the before. Before his incarceration, so when he was, a humble political freedom fighter, a little home. And then also we passed through the memorial next to the museum to Hector Peterson, who was one of the youth shot and killed during the Soweto uprisings in 1976. So we follow in his footsteps, and in the march that happened with those school children. There's a route around that incorporates Vilakazi Street, where Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela lived. So those are some of the highlights and some of the topics of conversation, I guess, to get into, is the role of youth, what they did for us, the gift they gave us through standing up to apartheid.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Amazing.
So that's Johannesburg. And then we go for the big game safari.
Wow.
Did you do safari, Chrissy, already in South Africa?
Nope.
You were over there the 2 days, so no, of
2
course
days.
not.
No, safari is my dream, right? And
Wow,
what a great way to oh, I'm
it
excited.
is so special. It
Yeah.
It
really
is so
is.
special. And we talked about this because everybody listening to this, and Jean, have you thought about South Africa before as far as a safari? Have you done safari? Have you been to
I
South
have.
Africa?
She
Yes.
has.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
I live vicariously through it. Got pictures.
I've been to Africa several times, and
Uh-huh.
but I've not gotten to Cape Town yet, and so
Mhm.
that's on my wish. But I have been to Joburg, and I went out to Kruger, and yeah,
Mhm.
all Victoria Falls. You know, as you move your way up the continent.
Yeah, for sure.
Wonderful.
Well, it's kind of exciting that you've been to Kruger, and we're not going to Kruger. And I want to talk about that just for a
Yeah.
second. And why are we not going to Kruger? Because Kira and I have this conversation all the time. Like, everybody wants to go to Kruger. But we have had, I think, almost 90% of Nanda journeys have done Pilanesberg, right? We've done some Kruger for sure. But now we know that this works so well. And it's what, 2 to 3 hours drive from Johannesburg. So being
Yeah.
time challenged,
Mm-hmm.
we wanted to pack in
Yes.
so much. We don't want to spend like pretty much a day, getting to Kruger, right?
Exactly. No,
Mhm.
makes perfect sense. Yeah.
And the other benefit is it's a malaria-free park. Not that
Mhm.
there's a big issue with malaria per se, but is this the only national park that's malaria-free, Kara?
Not necessarily, because as you head south, closer
Mhm.
to the province that Cape Town's in, there are game reserves in that area, and the Cape region is malaria free. But so
Mhm.
certainly in the north, in sort of the traditionally understood wildlife conservation areas of South Africa, it is, yeah, in the north it is, and that's because of its elevation compared to Kruger, which is much lower down.
Yeah.
So not just is it malaria free now, but just to understand that it's never been a malaria zone. So
Mhm.
it's
Okay.
not just an expansion of what development and getting rid of those mosquitoes, but it climatically it's never been a malaria
Never
zone.
been an area. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's an exciting, and it's beautiful because the topography is a little bit different too, right? Because it
Mhm.
has a little bit more in terms of, the hills and undulating landscape as opposed to a flat kind of
Mhm.
landscape. So the
Yeah.
viewing will be different, right? So the experience will be different as well.
Yeah.
But
It's in an old, you can't really tell anymore, but I mean, geologically, it's an old volcanic crater.
Mhm.
So its soils and stuff have produced a certain vegetation there that obviously the animals really like. And I suppose Kruger spans a huge longitude, so you get different environments in Kruger, and you don't really necessarily know in advance, if you don't know much about South Africa, which part of Kruger you're going to and what it's going to be like. Pilanesberg is a more contained. So we know, like Nicholas says, we've done it so many times. We know what we're offering. We know what's it's like all year round in that
Yeah.
environment, and its proximity is just the real winner. It's less. Yeah, it's 2.5, definitely, way less than 3 hours to
Yeah.
get there. Easy drive. So it makes it a very attractive
I think
destination.
for a trip like this, it's perfect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a time and a place, even for me, who dreams of going on a trip like Jean went, like and where I would do that, and it will be probably different, but for me and for this trip, and I think it couldn't be more perfect. So I'm excited about it.
And it's
Yeah,
the
I think
only,
you're trying to, you're really
Yeah.
getting a flavor of
I'm
a
trying to
number
get
of different
an overall
versus
experience of this
yeah.
yeah.
amazing
I
place.
mean, when I was
But
at Kruger, we just hung out at Kruger. That's why I'm saying,
totally,
like, I really want to go to Cape Town. Like, there's certain things.
yes, there's so many
Soweto,
things. Exactly.
Soweto for me was like a drive-by. It was like, oh, there
Yeah.
it is. So I'm really
Yeah.
looking forward to digging in.
I love
That's
that.
Lovely.
awesome. And the other thing that I think will be exciting for your group in particular is it's the only place, if you wanted to do a balloon ride, it's the only place you can actually do a hot air balloon ride. So Jean, you've done Kruger and you've done a traditional safari. If you wanted to do from the air, I did it in Tanzania, one of the best things I've ever done in my life.
You're
I
much
will-
much braver than I am, Nicola.
Oh my
I
God.
gotta tell you, I have always kind of dreamed of doing a hot air balloon ride and never did it until just this last trip when I did it over the Valley of the Kings in Luxor.
Ah, yes.
And I thought I would be petrified. And
Same.
it was so amazing that you don't even think about what you're
Right.
freaking doing. It's
Yeah.
just
Right.
it's
It's
like, oh my.
actually such a calm experience.
So
There's something
serene.
funky
It
about
was.
it, or
Mhm.
It was. I just never dreamed it would be. I felt like I would have some anxiety around it, but I didn't. It was amazing.
Okay.
And so I
yeah.
can't wait. I'm totally in on that. I
That's
mean, it's not
awesome.
optional for me.
And I'm scared of heights. I said to my husband, I
Oh.
know it's a lot of money to waste if I get there and I don't do it, but if I
Yeah.
don't challenge myself, the
Yes.
fact that I've spent the
Exactly.
money, I'm probably going to be slightly more motivated
Right.
to get it was incredible. It was incredible. Anyway, I digress
Yeah.
now, but on the way to Johannesburg after Johannesburg, we're going to go to the Cradle of Humankind.
Mm.
So that in itself, is a phenomenal experience. Some of the highest density of, the oldest human remains. And you do this in a pretty fantastic way, Kira, because you've aligned yourself with somebody who really
Yeah.
knows how to get in here and do it.
Love it.
Yes, yes. Paul Ziller, he's put together this. He's just he's an economist. A little bit like you because he has his day job and his occupation, but his side hustle, what he loves and what he's passionate about is ancient, really ancient history, but just the storytelling behind it. He loves storytelling, and so and he's partnered with a couple of the experts, the professors, the actual explorers and diggers. So visit the cradle is it's designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site because of these hominid fossils that are continuing. I mean, still, and this year, and they just keep finding.
It's an active dig site, right? So it's
Right.
active. Yeah.
So they're
Amazing.
active. There are a number of them within this cradle area, which is quite extensive. But so we visit a few, but they're not all accessible to the public. In fact, it's quite hard to get to the really active ones, and especially to be guided by the real experts as opposed to just a tourist guide. So this is not a tourist guided thing. So we meet these guys. The digs is in a nature reserve itself. So once we get there in our coach, we're going to continue on to Pilansbergen. Then we get into they're actually very much safari vehicles. These jeeps, they'll drive us. They'll be narrating, talking to us about everything they have to share, and then we'll be getting to the digs, participate a little bit, learn about it. So it's again, as you said, Nick, earlier, it's a very curated experience. This is not. There are two major museums and caves and things that are the big ticket tourist items in the cradle, and you can go there at any time, get your ticket, go do the walks. Their guides will take you around, but this is a private experience. This is something on private land that we organize because of our connection with Paul.
I think that's amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And we're staying in the Ivory Tree Game Lodge, right? So it's 5-star luxury experience. So it has a spa and a pool and a gym.
Yeah.
If you want to spend time there, but there's so much other stuff going around.
Should you want to recover from?
Yeah. Should you want to recover? But I think the nighttime's the most special time in the park, right? Because the night sky is completely different, and that's what fascinated me. I don't know if you remember the first time I came to South Africa, Kira, and we were doing all the development work for the student programs. I cried the first time I saw the Southern Hemisphere night sky. And we're in Shikudu in the bush camp. It's phenomenal. It's awesome.
So Nick, you mentioned the bush camp. Of course, Ivory Tree is a far departure from
Oh,
the bush
yes,
camp
it's a big departure from
dragged you
that.
off to. So it is luxurious. It's by no stretch of the imagination is it rustic. So anybody expecting sort of a rustic camp, this is not going to be that experience. So it is a little bit of luxury and glam in the bush, and we kind of chose it because it had a good bar.
I said that it needs to have a good bar.
But it is in a way like any safari lodge, no matter how rustic or luxurious on the scale it is, you do kind of bring your own vibe. So it's not, there's not a huge amount of, because you're not in a city, you're not with lots of people, you're not in a hotel. So a lodge has a limited amount of space. So you will be your own party, but at least there is a bar there to hold your own party.
That's why we're curating only the best travelers with us.
Mhm. And I
Love it.
imagine there'll be some very creative energy in the bar at nighttime and some very different drinks kind of
That's what's
experience
so
there, I
cool about
imagine.
it. I love that. I love it.
Yeah. And Kara, I would invite you to talk just a little bit as well about we've talked about the balloon and it's optional, right? Because not everybody's going to want to do it. So it doesn't make
The
sense
meal
to
times are
include
also great.
that.
And as you were saying,
Oh, I think we lost Kara for a second. Did we
okay,
lose you?
now I can
There
hear
she
you.
is.
Sorry.
There she is.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry.
So the rhino conservation capture is also something that's optional, but it needs a certain amount of people to be able to make it worthwhile. So to tell us a little bit about that, because I know your passion and your heart is in this, because this is true conservation and we don't have to do it, but it's an option that, Chrissy, depending on these amazing guests that you get and their interest, they may have an interest in this.
For sure.
Absolutely. So this one, yeah, really, it's an optional thing, but to me, it's the highlight of the trip.
I love it.
So, and yes, and yeah, it does require a certain number of people, but it can happen with any number. It just that there's a once-off cost to it. So the more that do it together, the more affordable it becomes, because you'll
More
split that once-off
cost-effective it
cost.
is.
The reason it's a once-off cost is because basically your contribution, those that participate, pay for the conservation service that is conducted that you participate in, and those are fixed costs. So the capture or the immobilization is really what happens. So you need a helicopter and you need a vet, and that's what your money goes towards.
Mhm.
So you pay for that airtime of the chopper, and you pay for the pilot, and you pay for the vet, and you pay for the either medicines or equipment that they need. And equipment in this case would be a radio collar. If they do a collaring, then it'll be a radio collar. If it's equipment, then actually it might be a dehorning of the rhino. It's specifically around rhinos, because we have really a scourge of poaching going on at a scale that South Africa didn't have historically. It's really exploded more recently. And so there's a massive effort to try and conserve the rhinos we have. South Africa was so successful at saving rhinos from extinction in the 80s that we have an amazing population of rhinos, and therefore it's a little bit, for the poachers, it's a little bit like coming to the cherry tree now. They come to South Africa because this is where they know they'll find them.
Right.
And they know they'll be in the parks, and so you literally just, it's almost like going fishing. They go out and they just know they're going to get a catch. So anyway, the efforts to conserve the rhino are centered around either dehorning them, because horns grow, so it's not a permanent disability or anything to the animals, or it's around keeping track of them, so putting a radio collar on and being able to monitor them. And so you need to obviously immobilize the animals to do these procedures, and that's where all the excitement comes. So you get to be on the ground with the rangers in their vehicles, tracking and finding the rhino. Then they send the message up to the pilots and the vets in the chopper. The chopper goes up. The vet darts the rhino from the air with the tranquilizer, and then you zoom in with the vehicles to the animal. Your job while the animal is unconscious is to keep it hydrated, to keep it cool, keep water on its body, monitor. You'll have the little device, monitor its heart rate, its breathing, make sure it's it's all okay, and then just assist if you can with the vet. You'll say, okay, pass me this, or hold that, or whatever, and they or either drill a hole into the horn and implant a tracking device, or put a collar on, or cut the horn off. It's usually the radio device. It's a quicker procedure, but we won't know until it actually happens.
And I should reiterate for everybody, this is not put on for tourists. It's not like, hey, let's go do this. This is part of their ongoing conservation, and this is a means to help fund and support, enabling them to do more of it. So it's awesome.
I think that's phenomenal. Even some of the other trips I've done, that's so important to me, to learn, to be a part of, trips that are dedicated to conservation or research or whatever. I think that was the reason I even chose the tour I went on in Antarctica, because it
Yeah.
wasn't tour guides. It was all dedicated to research and the learning that goes along with that. Again, it's not about, it's not about tourism, it's about learning
Yeah.
and
And just to
participating and saving, the things that are so important that we take for granted.
right,
So
right. And just to back that up, so Pilanesberg is a national park, so it runs obviously on national funding, and I'm sure everywhere in the world, when things aren't private and exclusive, this is a national park, so its funding is very tight, and to be able to be in a way paid, handed over the money to pay for this, a chopper, a pilot, and a vet. The Pilanesberg Wildlife Trust is the ones that we do this arrangement with. Then they literally like, oh my gosh, okay, we've got the pot for this rhino, and
Right.
they can then go
I
ahead
love
and
it.
book it, book the vet and the chopper and all the rest for that day, and it's all lined up thanks to the money being available to do it.
I love it.
That's
Perfect.
great. That's great. So let's talk South African wine. So transitioning pretty swiftly. So now we're in Franschhoek. Is that how you say it, Kara?
Yes, yeah, Franschhoek,
Franschhoek.
yeah.
Yeah. So tell everybody a little bit about I know you were particularly excited about this one, and I have an old safari picture in there. Sorry about that.
No worries.
But tell us why you're excited about this one, and you chose this area specifically as well.
Yeah. So Franschhoek, the name, it comes from the French Huguenots that fled Europe at that time, and I guess went all over the world. But the ones that came to South Africa ended up migrating into this valley. And hoek in Afrikaans is a corner, so it's the French corner of South Africa. And they actually celebrate Bastille Day and stuff like that. So they really play on their French heritage. So it's in a valley, and so our wine country, different to the Californian wine country, has this amazing backdrop with mountains, which I find so beautiful. You've got these green mountains coming down into the valleys, and then the vineyards kind of on the foothills of the mountains and through the valley. So it's very lush and it's just beautiful. It's like a Garden of Eden. And it happened, I guess, just to be really good terroir for wine. So some of the old Cape Dutch farms and estates are in this valley. And so that's really the hard part, is like how to choose, which I still haven't decided, like which cellar to go to, which one. Chrissy, you may have to like let me know if there's anyone that you're particularly keen on, because I'm going to need to
I will.
eliminate options. But we have lined up going to Babylon Sturin, which is just the most fabulous initiative. I mean, they've just done wonders on this farm, because it's not just about wine. It's about farm to fork. What's it? Farm to fork, eating,
farm to face,
about heritage and culture. So their gardens, they're just as famous for their gardens, and they're probably more famous for their gardens and their food even than their wine. So other estates will go to probably focus on wine, but Babylon Sturin is really around the food and around the organic farming and their whole story. And we'll tour their gardens before eating their lovely food.
In the greenhouse, which is beautiful. So the top left is a little bit of their garden. So you'll get to have the tour and the medicinal plants and everything. Yeah. And the Franschhoek in of itself is a cute little town. It's super. And we've got some downtime planned for you guys there.
That's so cool. I know, I'm so excited.
The other signature sort of thing about the Cape wine country is what we call it the Cape Dutch heritage and architecture. So again, different to California, in South Africa, we tend to find that most of our old and historic estates have a very similar and unifying architecture that comes from the Dutch influence of the settlers, and with big white gables, and I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, like the gabled homesteads with green shutters and wide verandas, and that kind of thing is very much a signature look of the wine country.
I
That's
love it.
beautiful. That's beautiful. And then we head to Cape Town, where Kara is. So this is why she had like 1,000,001 different things for here. So Kara will be very much part of your experience from Johannesburg, but really more so here in Cape
I
Town.
love
So
it.
Right.
this has got some exciting stuff from all of the iconic things that people know about Cape Town, Table Mountain and Robben Island, but there's some very special things in here as well that we've highlighted a couple of them. So the BOCAP cooking class is going to be really amazing. Like,
Yes. Yeah, Hamida has us in her house, and so the Boerkaap is the Cape Malay Quarter. So the original colonial site of South Africa was obviously Cape Town itself, and Britain already had their colonies in Asia, in the east, Malagasy and Indonesia, and that side, and they brought into the Cape Colony either artisans, slaves, servants, of that era, and so on. But they had an independent free quarter, and the descendants to this day live in the same place. It's this the color in this picture of the houses is exactly what it's like. There's bright colors on the cobbled streets, and it has this Malay influence. So the cuisine is very, very signature Cape Town, and it has all the aromatic spices. So further north of when we were on the food tour in Joburg, that's going to be more the hot spices. But the Malay influence is the aromatic spices, very tasty. And also quite sweet, I have to confess. A lot of sugars and cinnamons in their meals. So so we cook in a kitchen. But it's also simple. It's simple food. It's like nothing fancy and pretentious at all. This is proper, like, home, sit down at the kitchen table and tuck in.
Love it. Love it.
And then I want to talk at Table Mountain, of course, weather permitting, and I will say that, the weather cannot cooperate sometimes, so we're not able to do that sometimes, and that's just Mother Nature. That's obviously planned. But the Sustainability Institute, and I think the gentleman the Zimbabwean molecular biologist, I think he goes by the name Tappy Tappy, I read.
He does, he does.
Tell us a little bit about that, because Chris,
super excited about this. I was totally geeking out about this.
Oh, no, he is amazing. I'm a bit of a fan. But I must just raise one flag. We had to squeeze him in on a weekend. So I'm hoping that when the time comes, and it's so far in advance now, to say, okay, which week are you going to be free this weekend?
Yeah,
I don't know. But anyway, hoping to pin him down early in the year and just make him commit.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, he's actually quite a radical. He's just got this vision of reclaiming African pride. Like, so the reason it's ice cream, right, is because ice cream is such a import for Africa. It's an import from abroad, and therefore all the flavors come from somewhere else. And he's like, but why do we dismiss and discount African flavors? So he's brought in like the marula fruit and weird things. I mean, when he told me the names of things, I'm like, oh no, I don't know if I want to taste that. And then you taste it and it's like delicious. So you have to go with an open mind.
I can't. I'm so stoked about this.
But it's not just about ice cream. It's the decolonizing of our food and our approach to food in South Africa, which just has been so imposed upon by European ideas of what is good food, what is stylish food, what is tasty food. And it's in a way, it has, what's the word? It has undermined the pride in Africans' view of their own food. So he's got a real political slant on such a unifying element as food, and I love it. You got to sit down and just open your mind and hear what he has to say, and by the end you're like, gosh, that makes so much sense.
I'm so stoked about this.
And he has a playlist, so he has, like, in the background, like, he has the music playing, and he's got a very
I love it. The
particular
music paired with the ice cream and the flavors. I love it.
Yeah.
Epic.
It's going to be so cool. And something else, we have 2 slides for Cape Town because there's just so much. But the dinner one evening with Christo Brand and many of our guests have had the very unique and special opportunity purely because Kira has a friendship with Mr. Brand, and he does this for her to meet with guests. And he was, Mandela's former jailer. But they became friends, right, Kira? And obviously he has a perspective that nobody else, and that, that picture there is, and I've got my screen covering it a little bit, but the picture I have there is that of Mandela and Christo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and if you see the age of Mandela in that picture, it really shows that that claim is true, that they are friends, because,
Yep.
at Mandela's age there, he would not be sitting with Christo unless they had a friendship to
Right.
bind them over the intervening time from when he left prison and onwards. And in fact, I mean, it's even more than that. Mandela extended um, a a really generous sort of lifeline to Christo afterwards, because he gave him a job. Like, he gave him a job in Parliament and in his life, and as a curator of his museum and library and things like that. So yeah, it was a long lasting friendship, which is, I still, even though I've heard the story so many times, I find it almost unfathomable how they connected from a prisoner to the prison warden, that's, and Krista will tell you why. Krista tells the story of why they became friends and why Mandela trusted him.
Yeah, and that's
amazing.
awesome.
Yeah.
So of course you're going to see penguins on the Cape.
Yes, my spirit animals.
Yeah.
It'll be different than what you saw in Antarctica.
Very.
It'll be completely.
And I saw a lot of different ones in Antarctica. So it's amazing how many there are, how many different species. And so this is super cool.
I wonder what it is that rallies us all around penguins and them being so cute and stuff. I mean, there's not many people you can talk to that don't think penguins are the most cutest, most amazing thing to see.
They are.
live.
Right. Everybody got eyes.
Yeah. I think it's that amazing thing of seeing them in the water, like literally sort of seeing them flying, but in water. That's what makes them so fascinating. And this species, the African penguin, is highly, in fact, just this year, in the last, gosh, it feels like the last month or so, their status on the red list or whatever has gone. I don't know whether they want to say up a notch or down a notch. I don't know which way you say it, but it's got to the more critical phase.
More critical, right.
And their survival is the African penguin, these ones, will be extinct by 2035 if South Africa doesn't succeed in their conservation. Yeah. And this is because of the threat to their breeding and their food stocks. It's mostly their food stocks. They're starving. Right. So yeah, we have the only land-based breeding colony of the African penguin. They're otherwise all breeding offshore on islands. And so that's what makes it like so special. That's why they're only in Cape Town, not in Durban or other coastal cities. And they have a reserve, just this beach on our peninsula. And this really easy access to just go and watch them doing their penguin thing.
That's awesome. And then, of course, Chris, are you familiar with this particular winery?
I am.
So this is going to be exciting for everybody to visit this beautiful winery.
Exactly. So we're going to this winery basically for one reason, because if you've been to Franschhoek, obviously you're going to be tasting other wines and being in the wine country, but talking about stories and history and I suppose unique things. You can get good wines in Argentina, you can get good wines obviously all over the world, but Klein Constantia has this particular interesting little story about this bottle in the photograph called Van der Constance. And so I was going to say legend has it, but it is actually true that Napoleon had Van der Constance shipped to him when he was banished to St. Helena Island. And Jane Austen wrote about it in Pride and Prejudice, I think.
Oh, okay.
So in one of
my daughter's favorite book.
Oh, is it?
So it's got this history.
Told her about this part. She was like, I want to go.
It's a sweet wine, so it's a dessert wine. It is delicious. If you do have an appreciation for dessert wine, it is very sweet. And the bottle, it's like blown glass. It's all uneven. It's just like the whole little story about it. I love. So we're going to go there just to taste this wine.
Love
God,
it.
I'm gonna have to figure out how to come on this journey. I haven't been to South Africa in a while.
Yes,
Like you have to come.
you do. I love it.
Oh.
I
And then
love
Robben
it.
Island, of course, everybody's very familiar with Robben Island
Mhm.
and
Yes, for
Nelson
sure.
Mandela's capture, and you know, but
Yep.
the piece de resistance at the end, that actually we did this with students, and you're like, okay, Nicola, Kira, why are you having us like grown-ups go do something that students did? Because it's so darn fun, and it allows everybody to really tap into their youthful
Exactly.
energy.
Yes.
And it's the penultimate night, right, Kira? So it's not the last night, but food
Yeah.
jam, like music, and you're all cooking together in
So
competition
excited about
style. So
Yeah.
it's going to be super fun, all in
Yeah.
teams with music blasting, and yeah.
Yeah. This is
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
be
it is.
epic.
It's just a blast. It's a wonderful, fun
Yeah.
evening.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We could talk for hours, but I'm cognizant of the fact that we've been talking for a little while. Chrissy,
Yeah.
what else do you want us to talk about? I think we've talked through the highlights here, and
Yeah, I think, to me, this is, I wanted people to have kind of understand what inspired this, kind of really the coverage, right? That we're going to get. It's one of the things I love to do when I go into a new country for me, or I just like to explore just like a breadth, kind of the breadth of what the area has to offer, and there's still so much more, but to me it gives me that flavor, so I know what I want to come back for, what I want to do, what where I want to dig in, and what touched my soul or my heart or my brain or whatever, right? So I just wanted people to get a flavor for this, what we were going to do, why we were going to do it. I think this was perfect. Having you, Kira, just talk about how you kind of took some of those concepts and matched it with your passions and what of this amazing place. So I'm super excited. I think people will definitely get that from this, and
that's awesome.
get excited about what they could come discover and with us.
With
Yeah.
you. Some free nights
Maybe
as well. There's some free nights. So there's so many amazing restaurants that Kira wanted to include, or but everybody's taste and palate is different,
That's
and
just it.
goals.
We want to give people a chance to not just, do this Havrilla style, but to do their own thing and
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
create their own discoveries. And, maybe there's an experience that people want. So I love that. It just gives people some time to do that as well.
And maybe to close the circle, we started talking about sin and taxes being on the only bar on the African continent on that list. While you're in Franschhoek, you have a free evening, I think 2 free evenings where you can choose. We've made the suggestions, very pointed suggestions on where you should go to eat. But the one is the chance to go to South Africa's only Michelin star chef restaurant.
Yeah.
And that's something we'll talk about quite early on as the trip registrations
Yeah,
happen.
because I'm hitting that.
Yeah,
On it.
if we want to secure the very limited, it's such a tiny little restaurant, the space, then we need to do that quite early on. But at least people know, maybe who listen to this, that there is this one restaurant that we have in the country that has a Michelin star chef behind it, and its origin, it's his restaurant. And we'd have to get reservations there super early.
Yeah. Is there a time, like, with some of the Michelin star restaurants here, some of them only do it 30 days in advance. Some have, much longer time frames. So you'll have to let me know, and as we
I
coordinate
will.
people.
Yeah, so you're correct. It's not, we can't book yet, which is kind of a relief, because like, well, we don't know, who's coming, but early in the new year, I think I'll have to find out exactly when they open for reservations, how far
It's
in advance.
become a science and art in and of itself, how to do reservations at some of these restaurants, especially when they are small and experiential. So
And
find out, let me know.
with our exchange rate, it's actually increasing as I'm, talking to visitors on a daily basis in our city and in our country. Still, even Michelin star kind of restaurants for us, very high prices, but the foreigners keep telling me they cannot believe that they're getting this at that price in your currency. So
Yeah.
hopefully it is something that is attractive and accessible.
Yeah. Well, it will be for me. That's for sure. I know Jean will be down with it too. She had to drop a little early, but yeah, no.
And I know Danny Monahan, I'm sure she'll be down for that too.
Totally.
Yeah.
So
Everybody
we'll have a small quorum no matter what. So
Lovely.
and that's, it's a good place to kind of wrap up, as you say. We're keeping the group small, Chrissy, right? We decided,
Yes.
we want this to be a really intimate experience. So
absolutely.
you're not going to be
We priced it for 12. I think, that's going to be a perfect amount. We'll see if, depending, I have a feeling, we'll get a lot of interest in this. So, we'll see what we can do. But, I think ideally we'll try to keep the circle tight, so to speak. We want to have a good group. We want it to be, something spectacular. So
yeah.
I love it.
This has been fun. I
Thanks,
really enjoyed it,
ladies.
Kira. Thank you for getting up for us.
Enough for all you've done to put this together. It's amazing.
Your energy is definitely contagious. I've completely forgot that I had to set my alarm for that early hours of the morning. Looking at my watch, it doesn't feel real. It feels like I'm ready for the day now, but I will go back to sleep.
Please go back to sleep. Thank you.
And Chrissy, good luck with the Formula One.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got a late night tonight. The practices start in about 4 hours. So
wow.
Oh my gosh. And I'll touch base with you about my nephew. I'm gonna mention it now to him, and thank you for that. So this has been super fun. Thank you both. And
thank you.
We will try again soon.
All right.
All right. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.